Come to order. The meeting today is going to receive testimonies from two great guys, and we are really good timing for this event to take place. They are General John Hyten, Commander of the U.S. STRATCOM, and General Terrance J, Commander of NORTHCOM. This committee's top priority is to support the effective implementation of the National Defense Strategy. The NDS Commission, which we've had a hearing on already, and I think it leads us in the right direction. It is the blueprint that we're using in this commission. They made it clear that maintaining and modernizing nuclear deterrent is required. While we ignored the nuclear weapons after the Cold War ended, Russia and China have focused on more and more nuclear programs. You know, we, I guess, assumed that they weren't doing anything because we weren't doing anything at that time. Nonetheless, we may have fallen behind. Now we need to modernize all three legs with the nuclear triad, as well as the warheads and infrastructure and Department of Energy. We'll have some questions about that because there's a lot of comments around negating the necessity of the nuclearization modernization that we feel is necessary. The President and the Department of Defense have also rightly identified space as a war-fighting domain that is growing more important every day. General Hyten, you are a career space professional, and your current command both directs and relies upon many space systems every day. I look forward to hearing your views on establishing the U.S. Space Command as a full combatant command, and also your thoughts on the new Space Force. We had a chance to visit in my office, and I appreciate it, and I know I've heard that you've visited others too. It is kind of a confusing thing when you talk about a Space Force and you talk also about the combatant command and where the two are similar. So I'll have some questions along that line. General O'Shaughnessy, you have operational responsibility for the defense of the United States homeland. What an awesome responsibility that is. The Missile Defense Review recently enumerated a number of challenges to U.S. missile defenses, including cruise and hypersonic missiles. I am interested in your views on the most pressing priorities in the missile defense arena, as well as what we should be doing to address them. Lastly, General O'Shaughnessy, I'm eager to hear your assessment of the ongoing southern border deployment and how that might be affecting our readiness. It could, some interpretations of what's happening down there say that that could actually improve our readiness. So I'm anxious to hear your views on that. Senator Reed.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I want to join you in welcoming our witnesses, General Hyten and General O'Shaughnessy. We thank you and your families and the many men and women who serve with you to serve the nation and protect the nation. So thank you very much. General Hyten, first and foremost, we'd like to hear from you about the administration's decision to withdraw from the Intermediate-Range Nuclear Forces Treaty with nothing to replace it. I understand that Russia was in noncompliance and that China also poses a threat, but I believe a better path would have been to continue to pressure Russia back into compliance and ask modifications to the treaty if necessary. Treaties are a major component of our security strategy. We build and modernize nuclear weapons, but we also have treaties which prescribe numbers and use. Withdrawing from this treaty puts the extension of New START in 2021 on very shaky ground. I'm interested in your views on this matter. The second issue I'm concerned about is Russia's successful launch of their long-range hypersonic weapon, which I understand will be nuclear capable. China also has a multitude of similar systems, although not long-range like those of Russia. I'm interested in hearing your thoughts on the capabilities of our near-peer competition and what we need to do to counter these capabilities. The third issue I would like you to address is the administration's Space Force proposal. I understand the importance of space and the need for additional focus and resources for that effort. I'm also supportive of creating a full unified command for space. However, I remain dubious of the need to create an entire new bureaucracy of a separate service and all that entails. I think it is inevitable that such a creation will distract rather than provide focus to the critical mission of space. I know you have studied this issue closely, and I'm interested in your views on the pros and cons of this proposal. Finally, General Hyten, you are also responsible for the synchronization of global missile defense plans and operations. I'd like to hear your thoughts about the recently released Missile Defense Review and the Department's plans for our current missile defense systems and how to address future threats. General O'Shaughnessy, your mission is to protect the homeland. to deter and defeat attacks on the United States and to support civil authorities in mitigating the effects of attacks and natural disasters. We saw this demonstrated in DoD's support to the states and territories affected by hurricanes and wildfires this past year, and we thank you and your command for your significant efforts. You're also dual-hatted as the commander of the North American Aerospace Defense Command, NORAD, which brings unique responsibilities and partnering opportunities with Canada to deter and defend against advancing threats to our nations. You are also responsible for the operation of our Homeland Ballistic Missile Defense System. We look forward to hearing about your priorities for further improvements to the ground-based missile defense system in the context of the Missile Defense Review. This is particularly important in light of the threat from North Korea and potentially Iran. Lastly, at a time when the National Defense Strategy and our intelligence community's annual worldwide threat assessment are stressing the absolute necessity of using scarce resources to meet the challenge of near-peer adversaries like Russia and China, the administration is committing significant DoD resources and attention to what the President has taken to calling a national emergency at our southern border. In fact, nowhere in these two documents I've referenced, the National Defense Strategy particularly, are migrant caravans or drug traffickers crossing our southern border mentioned as threats to our national security. Russia, China, cybersecurity, and a host of other items are in those documents, but nowhere is there a finding that calls for 4,000 active duty troops to be deployed to the southern border. For comparison's sake, we have approximately 5,000 troops deployed in Iraq. I've yet to hear from witness before this committee who hasn't stressed the real threats we face and the need to restore readiness and provide modern facilities for our troops and their families. Instead, DoD is planning to reallocate funding that has been authorized and appropriated for installation commanders' top priorities in support of a wall that has no connection to a military threat and does not support military effectiveness. We'll also add that it is the responsibility of the Department of Homeland Security and Customs and Border Protection, not DoD, to patrol and enforce our borders. If this administration is serious about dealing with the drug epidemic and in our nation, then it should properly fund these federal agencies and other associated federal agencies. General Hyten, General OíShaughnessy, again, thank you for your service, and please pass our regards on to the men and women that you lead. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Reed. Well, General Hyten, we'll start with you and then go to General OíShaughnessy. Try to keep your statements in the realm of 5 minutes, but your entire statement will be made a part of the record. We'll start with you, General Hyten.
Thank you very much, Chairman Inhofe, Ranking Member Reed, distinguished committee members, good morning. It's an honor to be here today alongside my friend General OíShaughnessy, and a continuing privilege to represent the 162,000 Americans accomplishing the missions of U.S. Strategic Command each and every day. This is my third year appearing before this committee as the STRATCOM commander, and I've appreciated the opportunities to meet with many of you one-on-one and to testify before you. So I want to begin by thanking this committee for your enduring support to our national defense. The last time I testified before the committee, we'd begun our 10th consecutive year under continuing resolution. Not this year, thanks to your leadership. I can't overstate the importance of an on-time budget. The stability afforded with an on-time budget this year came at a critical time for us and had a positive impact on our modernization efforts and our overall force readiness. STRATCOM is a global warfighting command, and as part of the joint force, we're responsible for strategic deterrence, nuclear operations, global strike, space operations, joint electromagnetic spectrum operations, missile defense, and joint analysis and targeting. That's a big portfolio. To execute our assigned missions, the soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and civilians of my command operate globally across land, sea, airspace, and cyber. Our forces and the strategic deterrence they provide underpin and enable all joint force operations and are the ultimate guarantors of our national and allied security. So the most important message I want to deliver today is that I'm fully confident in our ability to preserve the peace and decisively respond in any conflict. We're ready for all threats that exist on the planet today, and no one should doubt this. Strategic deterrence is an active mission. It's not a passive mission. It's dynamic. Our capabilities must continue to evolve as the global threat environment changes over time. With this evolution, the adversary's decision calculus changes, which drives modification to our own deterrence approach. Today, we're challenged by multiple adversaries with an expanding range of capabilities, and we must adapt as well. To effectively deter and respond if necessary in this multipolar, all-domain world, we must outthink, outmaneuver, outpartner, out-innovate our adversaries. Deterrence in the 21st century requires the integration of all our capabilities across all domains. For over 2 decades, China and Russia have studied the way we fight. They study the American way of warfare. They've watched and learned how we train and fight. They understand the advantages we gain from integrating capabilities across all domains to accomplish our strategic objectives. To counter our long-held advantages, they're actively seeking to exploit perceived vulnerabilities and are directly challenging us in areas of long-held strength. While our advantages are beginning to erode, we have not yet ceded the advantage. So my focus this year is to continue to focus on the operations and modernization of our nuclear capabilities, focus first on the nuclear triad of ICBM, submarines, and bombers, to support a seamless transition as the Department stands up a new space-focused organization, and to continue the implementation of my new responsibilities as the Nuclear Command, Control, and Communications, NC3, enterprise lead and the operator and architect for this critical capability. To be successful in everything that we do, we must recapture our ability to go fast, faster than all our potential adversaries, and that's my biggest concern these days. That means we must return to the dynamic that made us the strongest, most technologically advanced military in the world. But over my 38 years in military service, I've watched as our nation has collectively developed an increasingly unhealthy expectation of trying to remove all risk from everything that we do. The challenge I've issued to my command is go break down the bureaucracy, take some smart risk, inform risks, do this within the left and right limits I established in my commander's intent, and we have to move fast. It's critical if we're to stay ahead. So I'm very grateful for your support in helping us do just that. I look forward to an on-time budget this upcoming fiscal year so we can sustain the momentum invigorating this department and our best in the world people, our best in the world commercial sector, to go faster and innovate to bring more timely and affordable solutions to our most pressing deterrence challenges. It's critical because nuclear war cannot be won and therefore must never be fought. Therefore, to prevent war, we must be ready for war. Success means we've lived up to our motto, coined over 60 years ago in Strategic Air Command. Peace is our profession. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today, and I look forward to your questions.
Well, thank you, General Hyten. Excellent statement. General O'Shaughnessy.
Thank you, and Chairman Inhofe, Ranking Member Reed, and distinguished members of the committee. I'm truly honored to appear today as a commander of the United States Northern Command and the U.S.-Canadian Binational Command, North American Aerospace Defense Command. It is a pleasure to be testifying today alongside General John Hyten, who's not only my good friend, but someone who I've admired and respected for so many years. U.S. NORTHCOM and NORAD are two complementary but distinct commands driven by a single, unyielding priority, defending the homeland from attack. In this era of rapidly evolving technology and renewed great power competition, the need for an energized and active defense of the homeland cannot be overstated. Revisionist powers Russia and China have given every indication that their own security strategies are based on holding the United States at risk with both conventional and nuclear weapons, and they have signaled that we must anticipate attacks against our civilian and defense infrastructure in the event of a conflict. Russia has modernized its aviation and submarine fleets and fielded long-range cruise missiles designed to evade radar detection. Russia and China continue their efforts to penetrate our networks while developing and testing hypersonic glide vehicles, and both have also established a noticeably stronger foothold in the Arctic along the northern approaches to the United States and Canada. As a result, the strategic value of the Arctic as our first line of defense has reemerged, and U.S. NORTHCOM and NORAD are taking active measures to ensure our ability to detect, to track, and defeat potential threats in this region. Our adversaries have engaged in deliberate, focused efforts over a number of years to exploit our perceived gaps and erode many of the advantages previously afforded by our geography and technological superiority. As a result, it is clear that our homeland is not a sanctuary. Our mission to deter our adversaries is dependent on our ability to detect and ultimately defeat potential threats to our homeland. And I am grateful to the committee for the strong support of U.S. NORTHCOM and NORAD priorities along those lines of effort. Your support for fielding AESA radars for our aerospace control alert fighters and improving the capability and capacity of our missile defense sensors and interceptors clearly demonstrate our shared sense of urgency and resolve. In that same spirit, we must take prudent steps now to ensure our next-generation defensive capabilities, to include a space sensing layer of space-based missile defense sensors, are not late to need. That effort cannot start too soon, given the fact that our adversaries are already developing and testing advanced weapons specifically intended to avoid detection in order to hold targets in the homeland at constant risk. I sincerely appreciate the committee's work to provide much-needed predictability and stability with an on-time budget in FY19. I'm also grateful for the committee's ongoing efforts to ensure that we avoid the devastating, deep-cutting impacts that a return to sequestration would bring to the Department of Defense. U.S. NORTHCOM and NORAD work every day with our partners to keep our citizens safe while confronting the challenges emanating from multiple approaches and in all domains. I especially want to take this opportunity to express my gratitude to the amazing men and women in the National Guard who are great partners and critical in our ability to perform our missions. Whether intercepting Russian bombers off the coast of Alaska or providing much-needed support to our federal law enforcement partners along the southern border, the airmen, soldiers, sailors, Marines, Coast Guardsmen, and civilians of U.S. NORTHCOM and NORAD are deeply committed to defending our nation, and I'm honored to represent them today. Senators, we have the watch. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, General O'Shaughnessy. You know, General Hyten, there are two areas of disagreement that we've heard among our colleagues on both the House and in the Senate. And you've heard some this morning in our opening statements, but one of them is the significance of nuclear modernization. Now, it's disturbing when we see the others, some of our adversaries, peer adversaries, China and Russia, have actually gotten ahead of us in some areas of artificial intelligence and hypersonics. But in the area of nuclear modernization, I know that Jim Mattis, Heather Wilson, and others have said that's the most significant thing that we could be doing. And yet some are saying that that's an area where we could be making cuts at this time. I'd like to have you start off by addressing that as to, do you agree with those who talk about the significance of that program, and make your comments on that, and then I'll get to the second one.
So it is the most important element of our national defense.
The most important element of our national defense.
And we have to make sure that we're always ready to respond to any threat. I can do that today because I have the most powerful triad in the world. I have ICBMs, submarine-launched ballistic missiles, and bombers that are ready to respond to any threat that comes. And because of the capabilities of each leg of the triad, I have the ability to respond to any threat. We did a nuclear posture review. It was released last year. In it, it validated the need for a triad. Our adversaries have also recognized the need for a triad. They are beginning modernization of their programs as well. In fact, Russia started their modernization program in 2006. They're about 80% through completing the modernization of their triad. They'll be pretty close to being through by about 2020, and in 2020, we'll still be starting. That is not a good place to be from a national security perspective.
Well, that's right. You've actually jumped to the second area of disagreement is on the triad, because several people have said that we don't need a triad, all three legs, that would adequately be handled without all three. So just specifically on the triad element of the necessity of the three legs.
You bet. So when you look at the threat we face, the threat from the Russian triad, soon the threat from the Chinese triad, threats from North Korea as well, you have to look at the three elements of the triad. The bombers are our most recallable element. They're the most flexible element of the triad. The bombers can be deployed and recalled by the President, deployed and recalled before they employ their weapons. They're the most flexible element. We can do almost anything with a bomber. The submarine is the most survivable element. It allows us to hide from our adversaries and make sure we can respond to any surprise attack. And the ICBM is the most ready element to respond to a quick surprise attack. And it also creates the most significant targeting problem for an adversary, because there are 400 separate targets across the United States. All would have to be independently targeted by an adversary. That targeting problem is hugely problematic and creates a significant advantage for us. So when you put those three together, you get this great operational capability. But the other thing it provides for us is the ability to respond to a failure in any one of those legs. If you have a technical failure, an intelligence failure, I can cover it with another leg, and that has happened during my tenure. And I never have put this nation at risk because I have the flexibility in the triad.
Yeah, and that comes also, General O'Shaughnessy, that's a big deal to you too. We look at what we've done with our aging system. We're talking about now getting into a modernized ICBM. I don't know how long that would take. Some people say all the way through the 20s. At the same time, you have our adversaries who they may have been late in starting, but they're starting in a more modernized way. Do you agree with that? And so they become a threat, even though right now, today, they may not be ahead of us in these areas.
Chairman, I would agree, and I think as the NDS articulates, the security environment has fundamentally changed, and part of it is because of what you alluded to. Yeah. And I think as we watch both Russia and China create success in some of their weapons programs in advancing the capabilities that they have are fundamentally changing, and not just on the ballistic missile side, but as you mentioned, the hypersonics, and also in the cruise missiles. And it's not just the cruise missiles themselves, it's also the platforms that deliver those cruise missiles. They've clearly invested very specifically with the ability to hold our homeland at risk with things like submarines and the bombers that they've modernized with the low RCS cruise missiles that they can then launch. And therefore, we have to also modernize. We have to stay ahead of that advancing threat, and we can't expect to have success with 20th century technology against 21st century threats.
Which is what we've had. Thank you very much. Senator Reid. Oh, let me interrupt Senator Reid, if I might, because we do have a quorum now. And I'll ask the committee to consider a list of 1,818 pending military nominations. All the nominations have been before the committee. The required length of time. Is there a motion?
So moved.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
No. It carries.
Thank you,
Senator Reid.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General O'Shaughnessy, as I've indicated in my opening statement, concerns about the use of American military forces along the southern border, and a hard time understanding the nature of an emergency that would require military forces when nowhere in the National Defense Strategy, the worldwide threat statement from the intelligence community, nor the statement from the commander of SOUTHCOM indicate that migrant caravans of civilians crossing the border are a military threat. In fact, in your opening statement, you say, and I quote, "The threats to our nation from our southern border are not military in nature," close quotes. So just to be clear, in your professional opinion, does the illegal crossing of the border by civilians represent a military threat?
Senator, first, I would say first that I do think a secure border does reduce threats to the homeland. Now, specific to your question about is it a military threat that is coming towards us, it is not a military threat, but that's slightly different than the answer of whether military should be responding to the situation.
Following up, in your professional opinion, again, would a wall be effective in defending a military attack on the United States?
Senator, I would say that, again, that border security is national security. I do see that any barrier in place to secure our nation does have some ramifications to our ability to defend against a military threat as well. Right now, there's not a specific military force from the South that we are trying to take action against. In this particular case, so, Senator, I would say over the last 5 months, I've spent a tremendous amount of time on the border, as you would imagine, working with our CBP partners. And in all of those trips and discussions, it has been clear to me that the Customs and Border Protection personnel very much value the border protection in seeing it, having the awareness, having some impediments, whether that be a barrier, a wall, et cetera, and then having the ability to respond to it. And that's been fairly universal as I've been doing my trips to the border.
And they are civilian law enforcement officials who have a law enforcement mission, and the context of their evaluation is based upon that law enforcement mission.
That is correct, Senator.
Thank you. You've mentioned many real threats that have been articulated in the National Defense Strategy. Russia and China in particular, many of them really are not focused on our southern border, but our northern border. The opening of the Arctic, operations by both China and Russia in the Arctic, and also I think the maintaining the capabilities of NORAD. Those are multi-billion-dollar tasks, and do you think they're of more military significance than any operations along the southern border?
Senator, what I would say is those threats are very real. Those threats are what we are focused on within both NORTHCOM and NORAD, because we do see that the evolving threat, as articulated within the NDS, very much is trying to take advantage of the northern approach. We have vulnerabilities there that we need to continue to close the gap on, and so that is a focus area for us at both NORTHCOM and NORAD.
Thank you very much, sir. Again, thank you for your service.
Sure.
General Hyten, I've just got a few minutes, but the issue of hypersonic weapon systems are increasingly critical to us. It seems, and from our perspective, that our adversaries are shifting more into the hypersonic realm for many reasons. One reason is that our defense systems were built for ballistic missiles, not hypersonic missiles. Do you feel that in the short run you can deter these hypersonic vehicles?
So, Senator, the hypersonic activities in both China and Russia are not the majority of their activities right now. The majorities are still the traditional ballistic missile, submarine, bomber threats that we can deter. Right. I also believe that we have the ability to deter any adversary that would employ nuclear weapons against us. My one concern in this area is that in order to effectively deter, you have to be able to see, characterize, and attribute where the threat is coming from. And as our adversaries are moving into cruise missile technology and hypersonic technology, that challenges our ability to provide those attributes of detection and characterization. We need to move in that area to sense the threat so we can effectively deter it.
Is it your sense that, let me ask a couple of questions because my time is running out. Is your sense that they're looking, they have, as we have, a legacy system of missiles, medium range, long range, intercontinental, but they seem to be moving with great energy into hypersonic, so that could be the weapon of choice in the future. Second part of that is that, as I understand it, and you can clarify it, hypersonics are not governed by the INF Treaty, so that we could develop hypersonics and still remain within the treaty. So where are they going, and can we do that without leaving the INF?
So they're clearly moving aggressively in the area of hypersonics. Their testing is a fully integrated systems, long range and medium range, has been well documented. As opposed to, what was the second part of the question?
The second part was we can conduct hypersonic research and deployment without violating the INF.
That is correct. So the INF Treaty says that it covers ballistic missiles, and ballistic is defined as more than half, the majority of the trajectory of the missile is ballistic. And the hypersonic missiles that we're talking about, less than half of that trajectory is ballistic. Therefore, they're not covered in the INF Treaty.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Reid. Senator Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General Hyten, in your prepared remarks, you said the only way to change our strategic deterrent is to convince our adversaries to reduce the threat. And this is not occurring. China and Russia in particular are not only modernizing the traditional elements of their own triads, but they're also building a myriad of additional nuclear capabilities to threaten the United States. In your comments to Chairman Inhofe, you explained the desperate need that we have for modernization and to continue with our triad, the importance that has for our national security and for the security of this world. I would ask you, are you aware of any intelligence or threat assessments supporting the courses of action that are called for from some that we need to unilaterally cut our nuclear forces?
I'm not.
Is it your view that taking such actions would make us more vulnerable and reduce our ability to deter threats?
It would significantly reduce our deterrent.
We're looking at a budget in the Department for Nuclear Forces and the plan for modernization. Some people consider it a wish list, just to give the department everything that they desire. And no effort's been made to sort through things to look at what we truly need to address the threats that we have. And I'm talking about need versus want here. That's not an accurate statement, is it, that it's a wish list?
I look at our nuclear capabilities, our triad, our modernization program as the minimum essential capabilities that are required to defend this nation. Because we have to defend against the most existential threat, and Russia and China and their capabilities are the most existential threat. So to me, that's the most minimum essential capabilities that we have to build, and even at the highest rate, it'll still be just roughly 6% of the overall defense budget. I think we can afford that security.
And do you fully support the nuclear posture review as it was put forward by the department?
I do, ma'am.
And do you truly believe it is needed that we continue on a path forward to reach the goals of that nuclear posture review?
I think it's essential. And if I could comment on the nuclear posture review, I think it's very interesting to look at our approach defined in the nuclear posture review and our adversary's approach. The elements in the nuclear posture review that we have put forth all stay within our treaty responsibilities. We don't recommend developing new nuclear-powered torpedoes, new nuclear-powered cruise missiles. We don't look at anything. We believe that we can secure this nation through the modernization of the triad and the addition of a couple of small elements to respond to specific threats. And in that case, it's the low-yield nuclear weapon and the submarine-launched cruise missile. But that's a very measured response to what our adversaries are doing.
I appreciated your very clear and concise explanation of the importance and really the mission of each leg of the triad. And I'm very pleased that you made that clear and concise for the record today. Thank you. I'd like to ask you a little bit about the New START Treaty. In your opening statement, you note that Russia is also developing and intends to deploy novel strategic nuclear weapons like its nuclear-armed, nuclear-powered underwater unmanned vehicle and intercontinental range cruise missile, which Russia seeks to keep outside of existing arms control agreements. Do you believe that these new systems, if they're deployed, should be counted under a New START Treaty limitation?
So the way the New START Treaty is defined is that there's the New START Treaty only covers existing weapons when it was put in place in 2011. That means it covers the ballistic missiles, both submarine and ground-launched. It covers the bombers and the cruise missiles on the bombers and the platforms that carry them. There's also a clause in the treaty that says if somebody, if one of the parties of the treaty sees the development of new strategic arms, they can come to the bilateral consultative commission and bring those things forward. I have not seen that happen, but we see them developing capabilities outside of that treaty, which is concerning to me.
Do you believe a decision to extend the treaty should be made on its national security merits, and Russia's behavior figures heavily into that evaluation, with just the example that I gave you, that we need to be looking at these not just to renew a treaty?
I do, ma'am. I want Russia in every treaty. I want Russia in the INF Treaty. I want Russia in the New START Treaty. I support those treaties, but they have to be parties to those treaties. It takes two to participate in a treaty, at least.
And Russia has not been a party to the INF Treaty, is that correct?
Russia has violated the INF Treaty for 5 years now, and despite our best efforts, we have not been able to bring them into compliance. I've talked about that to the President. I've talked about New START to the President. We all want Russia in that treaty. We want them to participate, but if they won't, we're tying our own hands to deal with the adversaries in the world, including China, who is not part of that treaty.
It doesn't help when your partner in a treaty is not in compliance and we remain in compliance.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Senator Fisher. Senator Shaheen.
General Hyten, General O'Shaughnessy, thank you both for your testimony this morning and for your service to the country. I want to begin my questions with you, General O'Shaughnessy, because I understand that part of your responsibilities as the leader of a combatant command is to look at counter-drug operations at our borders. Is that correct?
Ma'am, what we do is we do support law enforcement agencies in a supporting role for some of the counter-narcotics work.
And have you been made aware of any plans that would take money from what's being proposed already to fund the President's recent directive to reprogram DOD interdiction funding to pay for a border wall?
Ma'am, as you know, with the declaration of a national emergency, that is now being considered. The Secretary of Defense and I, actually together with the Chairman, went down to the border this weekend on Saturday in order to see firsthand, the Secretary to see firsthand both what our troops are doing now, as well as looking at the border and potential applications of DOD funding for the border to inform his decisions. Those decisions, and that is ongoing this week. And so at this time, that is work in progress with the Acting Secretary of Defense.
But do I understand you to say then that plans are being drawn up that would take money from those drug interdiction efforts to use for funding a wall?
That is one of the options that is being looked at. It is premature at this time, and that work is being done literally as we speak.
Well, as I'm sure you're aware, the opioid crisis in the United States has taken tens of thousands of lives. In New Hampshire, we have the second highest opioid overdose death rate in the country. So this is an issue that we care tremendously about. And it's my understanding that most of the illicit drugs and that come into this country come through ports of entry as opposed to coming across the border in other places. Is that what you've seen?
Ma'am, I've seen a little bit of both. And there's recently been a DA report that talks about the most common method of transportation through the borders is in fact through the POEs, but it's most common, not necessarily that all of it goes through there. It further delineates and talks. And I'll give an example of just this week when twice I've been to the border, and one of my trips down there, what they talked about was the TCOs that run the migrants coming are the same criminals that also run the narcotics. And what we're seeing now is a coordinated effort, for example, where they'll send a large number of migrants over the border to take the Border Patrol agents off of the line, and then they'll use that as an opportunity to bring drugs across the border while the Border Patrol agency are processing the migrants. So it's a coordinated effort here that brings it all together that is very disturbing as we go forward.
And do you agree that it's helpful to have technology and more people at our ports of entry so we can better interdict drugs coming through there?
Absolutely, ma'am.
General Hyten, I want to follow up on Senator Reid's question about hypersonic weapons, because I very much appreciated your strong statement that we are in a position to defend this country against all threats. Does that include hypersonic weapons? And there have been reports, public reports, that we don't have a defense against those hypersonic weapons.
So our defense against hypersonics is our nuclear deterrent. If somebody attacks us with a nuclear hypersonic capability, we have the ability to respond. Now, it's important for us to be able to track that, to understand where it comes from. So if you look at the way a hypersonic missile works, the first phase is ballistic, but it's a fairly short phase. That phase we will see. We will see the launch. We'll be able to characterize it, understand it came from Russia, it came from China. But then, from our sensor perspective, it basically disappears, and we don't see it until the effect is delivered. We need to build sensors to be able to understand exactly where those things are going so we can better defend ourselves. You can't defend yourself if you can't see it.
And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but do we have any sense about how much time we have from the point at which those weapons might be launched until when they might land in the United States?
So it's a shorter period of time. Well, ballistic missiles, roughly 30 minutes. A hypersonic weapon, depending on the design, could be half of that. Depending on where it's launched from, the platform, it could be even less than that. So there's a lot of variables into that, but it is more challenging than a ballistic missile.
Thank you. I know that, well, the United States suspended its obligations under the INF Treaty. There's been some discussion about that. Can you talk about what our next steps might be to improve our position and to strengthen deterrence against Russia, China, and North Korea?
So I think the most important thing we can do is continue to modernize our nuclear triad. As long as we have nuclear capabilities that our adversaries cannot attack, they cannot take out, and they cannot eliminate, we'll be able to prevent the use of nuclear weapons on our nation. I remember when I interviewed for this job with President Obama, and then I interviewed with Secretary Mattis after he took over. They asked me, what is the number one reason, what is the reason we have nuclear weapons? And I said, the reason we have nuclear weapons is to prevent people from using nuclear weapons on us. That's exactly why we have them. And if you don't have a robust capability and our adversaries don't believe that you're willing to respond, then you run the risk that somebody will take that step across the line that nobody ever wants to experience. That's why we have to make sure we modernize as we go forward.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Shaheen. Senator Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gentlemen, thank you for your service. I want to follow up a little bit with regard to the nuclear triad and what makes it as important to us as it does today. Part of it is the reliability. And when we start talking about the reliability of the nuclear triad, one of the areas that I think we've identified as being in need of updating is the nuclear command and control of the different portions of the triad. Could you share with us a little bit about, within recognizing the setting that we're here, the weaknesses that we are trying to improve upon, and include within that a discussion about the cyber threats that are shortcuts and that really do put our systems at risk today?
So one of the interesting things I've observed in my 27 months in command now, so that's a long period of time, 2 years and 3 months. Not one time in that 2 year, 3 months have I lost connectivity with the nuclear force. Can you imagine any other electronic system in the world where that has happened? That shows you how resilient, reliable, and effective the current command and control system is. But what concerned me about it is I really can't effectively explain that to you, because it's been built 50 years ago through different kind of pathways, different kind of structures. We look at it hard each and every day, and we know that those things are going to have to be replaced in about a decade. And so the big challenges that we have is how are we going to replace that old ancient thing that works so well, that we know works but won't work after about another decade? How do we replace that with something that works just as well and with modern technology when we have the cyber threats we have to look at? One of the great things about being so old is the cyber threats are actually fairly minimal.
Would it be fair to say that there isn't an hour that goes by in which our system of protection of our communication system isn't challenged someplace along the pathways?
We see literally thousands, if not millions, of attacks against our systems every day. Attacks is defined as an unknown activity trying to get into a network. May not be an attack, maybe just a curious person, but nonetheless, we look at all those and make sure we defend those accordingly. So we see that broadly in the network side. It's much more secure in the nuclear side because much of that is closed off to the world.
With regard to both hypersonics and, as the item of discussion lately, the torpedo, which has been discussed in terms of the Russian advancements, in both cases there's a question as to the vector that we receive them from. Both are capable of movement, changes in direction, and so forth, which really changes the way that we defend North America, because in many cases our defenses have been built on the closest or the most direct route from our near-peer adversaries into the North American continent. Can you share with us a little bit about the needs, first of all, for the space-based capabilities that we're going to need in order to determine where hypersonics are at and so forth? And second of all, in General O'Shaughnessy, I would just ask, can you share a little bit about the changes within the threats that a torpedo that could hit along our shorelines could do with regard to how we have to refocus our North American defenses as well? So really two questions, but if you could each.
So real quickly, Senator, when I was a young officer and the Soviet threat existed, we had big radars on our southern border. We had a radar in Georgia and a radar in Texas, Robbins and El Dorado, that were looking south for threats that we had to worry about. When the wall came down and Russia became our friend, we dismantled those radars. So we have no radars that look south. We have built radars, and we're building a radar in Hawaii, built a radar in Alaska to defend against the Korean threat in particular, to make sure we can enable General O'Shaughnessy's missile defense. But there's not enough islands in the world to build a radar to defend every avenue. Therefore, we have to go to space. And we can go to space now in an affordable way with distributed constellations that can look down and characterize that threat in a global perspective so we can see them wherever they come from. That's the direction we need to go.
All at risk of cyber interference.
All at risk of cyber interference, which is the big challenge of the day.
Thank you. General O'Shaughnessy.
Yes, sir. As we talked about earlier with respect to the Arctic, as the geography is no longer the buffer that it once was, I would say the same thing from the sea. It was a time where we, for decades, actually used the sea as a moat and really didn't have to worry from the threats directly coming against the homelands from the sea. That has fundamentally changed, as you were mentioning, relative to the weapons that are being created. Therefore, we need to go and invest ourselves in our ability to have, first, the domain awareness. And just as General Hyten had mentioned, you have to see it if you're going to be able to react to it and ultimately defeat it. Right now, we need to invest in the IUSSS, which is our integrated undersea surveillance system, which is atrophied as it relates to the continental U.S. and our ability to defend there. We need to invest in that now to be able to defend against these advanced threats that are coming from the sea.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Rounds. Senator Blumenthal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you both for your service and for your very forthright and candid answers at this hearing. General O'Shaughnessy, is there a national emergency at the border?
Senator, the President has declared a national emergency on the border.
I'm asking you, in your military opinion, does this nation face a national emergency at the border?
Yes, Senator, as the President has declared that national emergency, he has given guidance and direction down to the Secretary of Defense and then the Acting Secretary of Defense. As that's happened, it's been parlayed to me in the form of an execution order, which makes it very clear to me of my actions that I need to take as a result of the guidance from our senior leadership.
Did you recommend that he declare a national emergency?
Sir, I did not directly recommend either way. I will say I
Were
have
you
had
consulted before he did it?
Senator, I will say I've had multiple conversations, numerous conversations directly with the President with respect to the border. In addition, I've had multiple conversations as the Secretary of Defense and Acting Secretary of Defense has gone over to the White House for these conversations that have happened. And I think I feel very comfortable that as the operational commander that our perspective was considered as those decisions were made.
What is the threat to our national security that justifies declaring a national emergency, General?
So what I see from my perspective is that a secure border will reduce the threats to the homeland.
That's a general statement, but what is
It
it
is, Senator.
specifically at this moment in time that justifies declaring a national emergency?
Senator, again, I would say that the President has made that declaration. We are
So you're
responding to
saying,
that declaration.
in effect, I don't mean to be disrespectful, that there's a national emergency because the President has said there's a national emergency.
No, sir. What I'm saying is that from my perspective, I get my orders from the Secretary of Defense and the President. Those orders are very clear to me, and I am just like any other mission that I am given. When I get that legal order and I have the troops that are able to enforce that and take those actions, I do with the same vigor and professionalism that I do for my ballistic missile defense, my Operation Noble Eagle, et cetera. I take that same look to the
I
path that I've been given.
understand that you follow orders and you do it well and you're proficient and expert in your duties, and I commend you, but you didn't recommend that the President of the United States declare a national emergency, and you have not given me as yet a specific fact at the border now that justifies declaring a national emergency.
Senator, I spent a lot of time on the border over the last 5 months. Have very specific conversation with our lead federal agency, in this case the Customs and Border Protection, as well as the Department of Homeland Security and directly with Secretary Nielsen on a regular and routine basis. I will defer to them with respect to the characterization of the threat. I will say we are trying to be a good partner to another lead federal agency as they take on this challenge.
I'm concerned, General, very frankly, that this administration is politicizing our military and militarizing our immigration policy, in effect using the troops under your command as political props, both in terms of declaring a fake emergency, but also compromising our potential security by diverting them away from other assignments and missions that are absolutely necessary. My understanding is that these troops were engaged in various readiness and training exercises at the time they were deployed. Is that correct?
So there's been quite a few different deployments and units within there, but to your point, some of them would. I will also say that many of the units that have deployed, especially the initial salvo that went out, are actually doing exactly what their military skills are. Military police doing military police business, engineers doing engineering business. In fact, many of them come back and talked about the readiness advantage they have for the way that they've been deployed. That said, readiness is a key concern of ours and mine in particular, and we will continue to look at the impacts to readiness as we go forward.
General, recently, I think last week, as a matter of fact, Undersecretary Rood and Vice Admiral Gilday testified that a minimum of $237 million has been spent so far on deploying both active duty troops and Guard personnel at the border. They were unable to provide a total cost estimate for fiscal year 2019, even though those deployments have been extended, correct me if I'm wrong, extended through September of 2019. Can you give us a cost estimate?
Senator, I will confirm that the deployments have been extended through the September of 19. The cost estimate, and I'm specifically on the Title 10 side, which is the part that's under my command and control, was at the $132 million through the 31st of January of this year. We'll continue to work with OSD, who is ultimately the one who is running the calculations with respect to the cost.
In connection with the declaration of national emergency and the diversion of money that is necessary to build a wall, have you made a recommendation as to military construction projects within your command that be stripped of funding to fund the wall?
Sir, the actual funding is being worked by the Secretary of Defense as we speak. I did go down to the border to El Paso area with the Secretary just this last weekend, so he would have an understanding both of the military aspects of what our troops are doing right now, as well as be able to talk to the Customs and Border Protection, the folks actually doing the mission there, and be able to take that into his calculations as this week he determines the funding that might be applied toward resourcing a wall or other efforts on the border.
So the money that will be taken from military construction projects under your command has not yet been determined as to what specifically and where it will come from.
That is a true statement, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Blumenthal. Senator Ernst.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, gentlemen, for being here today. We truly do appreciate it. I appreciate for both of you your extreme professionalism in a very difficult time. So thank you very much for stepping up. I do appreciate it. General O'Shaughnessy, let's go back and visit a little bit about the National Guard. You happened to mention it in your comments. And this morning we had our National Guard breakfast caucus. A lot of our adjutant generals are here in town today and really excited to be here and speaking with all of their elected representation. Can you talk a little bit about how the National Guard fits into the overall force structure here in the United States, and what type of missions are they engaging in?
Yes, ma'am. Thanks for the opportunity to highlight the great partnership we have with the National Guard. And I'll say certainly from the NORTHCOM and NORAD perspective, they are absolutely integral and core to every single mission that we do within our command. And it goes all the way from whether it's the aircraft that are sitting alert as we speak right now in across both the CONUS as well as in Alaska, or whether it goes to the command and control that's part of that, whether it's the ballistic missile defense that we have in place. Every mission set that we have right now, the National Guard is actively employed in doing that. And frankly, I can just tell you, plain and simply, we could not do our mission set without the National Guard and their contributions.
And we appreciate that very much, and we want to utilize them as much as we can. We do know that there are a number of troops that have been activated or mobilized for work down on the southern border. We know that to be true. And I would just state that having served in the National Guard and responding to a number of different mobilizations, whether it's hurricane relief, whether it is working in flood situations, or whether it's down on the border, that our troops are actively engaging in their MOS-specific skill sets. So if you're a heavy equipment operator, you are out there driving a dozer, you're operating. If you're a truck driver, you're driving. You're actually doing those skills that have been assigned to you. So thank you for highlighting that. I think it is great for our readiness to actually be able to engage in our MOSs. So thank you for that. I also want to go back. We've talked a lot with General Hyten about modernization and our nuclear capabilities, but let's focus a little more with you. And what do you see the most pressing modernization requirements for NORTHCOM?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for the opportunity to highlight this. And it's actually fairly similar. The first thing is domain awareness. Over the years, we have just let atrophy our ability to understand and see what is happening in and around our nation. It was done at the time for the right reasons, because we had a sanctuary. We had the ability to not have more advanced sensors and more advanced capabilities. But now that it has fundamentally changed based on the security environment, based on our potential adversaries, our peer strategic competitors that now have the ability to reach out and hold us at risk, we need to fundamentally relook at the way that we're maintaining our domain awareness. And that can't be done with one single widget, one single particular program. It's going to have to be a family of systems. It's going to have to include both terrestrial-based capability and a research of technology and terrestrial-based. It's going to have to include some air domain advances in technology and capability, but it's also absolutely going to have to include space. And we really need to accelerate our work to put sensors in space that can help us understand the domain, both in the sea, on the sea, and in the air, of the threats that are coming towards our homeland. In particular, the Arctic is an area that we really need to focus on and really look at investing. That is no longer a buffer zone. We need to be able to operate there. We need to be able to communicate there. We need to be able to have a presence there that we have not invested in the same way that our adversaries have. And we clearly see, they see that as a vulnerability from us, and whereas there is becoming a strength for them and it's a weakness for us, and we need to change that, flip that equation.
Yes, and you mentioned the Arctic, and I'm sure that my colleague, Senator Sullivan, will have a lot of great questions there. But when we talk modernization, have we identified a system to replace the aging Northern Warning System?
Ma'am, we have a study that's going on right now. It's a binational study. It's being done by our Air Combat Command within the United States Air Force as well as with Canada that is going to help us. But I will tell you that North Warning System right now, the last hardware insertion of technology was 1985. That needs to be invested in. And again, it needs to be part not just of advancing that, but also doing the all-domain awareness in addition to the terrestrial base.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And General Hyten, thank you so much for hosting me last year at STRATCOM. I really appreciated the tour and the time you took to educate me on your mission set there. Can you talk a little bit about the move that's ongoing off at Air Force Base?
So, Senator, I'm glad to be able to sit here and say we're actually getting ready to move into the building. It's been a long time. It's a couple years late. The Guard did an amazing job. We brought in over 20 engineering and installation squadrons from the Guard to help us recapture some schedule. They saved over $70 million of the taxpayers' money, and they saved us probably more than that in schedule. So we're getting ready to move in. I think we'll be able to start next week, and I hope to have the opening ceremonies this October, and that'll be a big day because we'll be able to do our mission even better. That will become the hub of nuclear command and control.
Outstanding. Gentlemen, thank you both so much for your leadership. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Ernst. Senator Heinrich.
General O'Shaughnessy, forgive me for jumping back and forth between Intel and this committee this morning. There's a little bit of something going on over there as well. I wanted to return to something that Senator Blumenthal came up and just make sure I have the correct information that you were not consulted by the White House before the decision to use military construction dollars to pay for the national emergency.
No, sir, that was not my response. Specifically, we've been in dialogue. I've been in dialogue with the President all the way down for multiple occasions to include in coordination with the Secretary of Defense. And that the actual decision of how that funding will be placed is actually what the Secretary of Defense is actually working through literally right now.
Were you consulted before the announcement?
With multiple dialogues, talking about the border, talking about the
yes?
situation that we see, our ability to have the operational perspective known was absolutely present.
No, my question is, were you consulted as to using military construction dollars as the source of funding to pay for the national emergency efforts?
Yes, and in fact, with the Secretary of Defense.
That's a decision you support?
I gave my best military advice to the Secretary of Defense to include physically going down with him to the border so to make sure he understood the operational perspective.
If those dollars do flow to that priority rather than what they were appropriated for and authorized for, what impact would the cancellation of some of those construction projects have, whether it's for military housing or air traffic control improvements or even runway upgrades? What impact would that have on military morale?
I think right now, Senator, that's premature. I think as we look at it, that's exactly the types of things that the Secretary is looking at. He's looking at it from what is the right balance, what is the right use of those funds, and what would the correct funds be, appropriate funds to use, given the direction that he has been given.
Well, given the Constitution, I would suggest that's a job for Congress.
Sure.
General Hyten, DOD's initial requirements for plutonium pits are to produce 30 pits per year at Los Alamos by 2026. Are you and NNSA still laser focused on making that happen?
We are laser focused on 30 by 2026 and 80 by 2030, and my requirement is that. I never said where they had to be done, but if we don't get 30 in Los Alamos, we'll never get to 80.
Right. If personnel and scientific expertise were shifted from one place to another during that effort, what would be the potential impact for the near-term goals?
So I've told the Secretary of Energy as well as the administrator of the NNSA that we can't move anything out of Los Alamos into Savannah River that would take our eyes off of the 30 in 2026. And I'm going down to Los Alamos and sending my people down to Los Alamos to make sure that that focus is always there. Because, again, if we can't get to 30 by 2026 at Los Al, we can't get there at all.
Well, I appreciate your focus on this effort. It's very welcome, and you're always welcome at Los Alamos, as you know. I also understand that the administration, General Hyten, is currently reviewing whether it'll seek to extend the New START agreement that limits U.S. and Russian strategic nuclear weapons to 1550 treaty-accountable warheads, with additional limits, obviously, on delivery vehicles. Is that information accurate? Is that correct?
We are looking at that. The President asks me about that every time I see him.
Okay.
It's high in his mind. Again, the issue there is all the efforts that Russia has going on right now that aren't elements of the New START treaty, the torpedo, the cruise missile, the hypersonics, all aren't part of that treaty.
Correct.
We believe that we would like to have all nuclear weapons as part of a future strategic arms treaty. That's my desire. So I want Russia in that treaty. I want Russia. Sure. I want Russia in the INF treaty. But if they won't participate, then we have a decision.
I share that sentiment, and certainly, hopefully, we can move to a world where there is control on more weapon systems rather than simply getting rid of the tools that we have to, in theory, get something that's perfect and more inclusive. Does New START provide significant benefits to U.S. national security interests, and if so, what would those be?
So no treaty is perfect, and New START is certainly not perfect. But what it gives me at Stratcom, it gives me two very important things. Number one, it puts a limit on the basics of their strategic force. So I understand what the limits are, and I can position my force accordingly so I can always be ready to respond. And maybe as important, it also gives me insight through the verification process of exactly what they're doing and what those pieces are. Having that insight through my forces and our partners is unbelievably important for me to understand what Russia is doing. But we don't have insight into all the other things that are going on right now. That'll be the challenge.
If we were to lose that insight without gaining more global insight, would that be a step forward or a step back?
That's the balance that will be in the decision that the country has to make as we go forward on the benefits of New START. I would like everything on the table.
Thank you, General.
Thank you, Senator Heinrich. Senator Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and gentlemen, thanks for your exceptional service to both of you on all the hard work you're doing. I want to talk about the Arctic and missile defense, but I actually wanted to just add a little bit to the exchange you had with my colleague, Senator Blumenthal, who I have a lot of respect for, work with on a lot of issues. But General O'Shaughnessy, let me ask, how many Americans were killed by drug overdoses last year? Do you know?
Yes, Senator, I do. The 72,000 in last year and 70,000 the year before.
So more than all the men and women killed in the Vietnam War just last year, right? 72,000 Americans. Okay?
That's correct, sir.
And that's opioids, heroin, meth. How much of the heroin in America comes from Mexico?
So there's a significant portion that comes up through the southern approaches.
The number I've heard is over 90%.
Sure.
Okay, so if that's not an emergency, 72,000 dead Americans killed by opioids and heroin in 1 year, I have no frickin' idea what an emergency is. So that's just my view on that. Do you have any comment on that? Is that an emergency, 72,000 dead Americans?
Sure, I would say that clearly this is a national issue that we have to take on with the whole government approach.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Let me talk about the Arctic. By the way, General O'Shaughnessy, I really want to commend you. You are by far and away the NORTHCOM commander who has actually put this on the radar as a serious issue. Just today in your testimony about so many of the threats operating both in the Arctic and passing through, I think is a wake-up call. This committee has been doing a lot of work in that regard. Let me ask a couple issues with regard to capabilities. The Russians have a fleet of polar icebreakers that is 40 They're building 14 more, including nuclear-powered icebreakers, weaponized icebreakers. We're finally getting our act together on that. Last year's NDAA authorized 6. This past appropriations bill, recently signed by the President, has about close to $700 million on the first one. But do we have the required capabilities to answer the Russian and, by the way, Chinese challenge in the Arctic? And if so, what more capabilities do we need?
Senator, you start with icebreakers, and I will highlight that as well. On paper, we have